It's like we meet before the call and then we just tell jokes and then we just end up laughing.
Yes.
And then we
As
enter
we
and we're
do.
like,
and as we should. I love it. Hello, everyone. It is Alicia and Alina again. I'm so excited for today's live video as a part of our usual series. We love to give you lots of tips on how to actually just start your business, even before you get to maintenance mode and even before you get to registration. There's so many things that you need to really put in place to make sure that you are ready to start your business. So today I am joined by Alina, and she's going to give us some tips on how to name your business. So Alina, please introduce yourself and what you do here at Owner.
Yeah, cool. How to name your business. You said that so robustly. I love it. Hey folks, I'm Alina, Senior Manager, Revenue Operations and Strategy at Owner. I have the pleasure of working with a lot of Canadian entrepreneurs and I love doing it. And more importantly, I love bantering with Alicia on Facebook Live. And I'm really excited about today's topic and hopefully it'll answer some unknowns for you entrepreneurs out there.
Yes, this is really exciting. Like I've had many a business and I've been like entrepreneurial my entire life. And so I'm excited to dive into today's topic because I wish, again, this is a running theme for me. I wish I knew this information before I started my business. I'm very lucky I picked a great name, but my previous businesses were not that lucky. So, of course, in theory, we know that business names are extremely important. It's usually the first way that like potential customers actually connect with a company and their brand and learn about their business. So, I didn't know this before doing research for this segment, but there are actually different business name types. So, are you able to let me know, like the top 3 of them because we don't have the time to go through them all?
Yeah, totally. And I'm glad you mentioned that about your business because I've made so many mistakes in the past where I've chosen a name that is slightly different than others, but still so similar that it makes it so difficult to distinguish yourself from competitors. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But if we want to talk about 3 types of businesses, the first one I'll mention is actually, let's take a step back. We're going to get into the nitty gritty and the legal stuff in a bit. But I think for right now, let's put on our creative juices, or let's put on our thinking hats and get the creative juices flowing. And let's park the legal, how to structure a business name for just a minute. So the 3 types of businesses that I'll talk about. The first one is a clever business name. This is a name that typically involves something like a play on words, where it's engaging your audience and it'll use techniques like a pun or a rhyme. I'm terrible at rhymes. I think I'm better at puns, but that's besides the point. An example of this would be, the first thing that comes to mind is The Knot. If anyone's aware of the wedding website or magazine, The Knot, it's spelled K-N-O-T, and it's like obviously a play on words for tying the knot. Clever. Another one would be an emotional business name. So this is the kind of name where it kind of creates an emotional response from your audience. So you want them to feel something specific, whether it's joy or sentimentality or, I don't know, nostalgia. It's something that they feel when they hear your business name or read your business name. And so an example would be genuine impact or brave care. Like brave, kind of hits deep, and I feel the emotion of brave. Yeah, exactly. So that's another one. And then I'll say a third one, which is a pragmatic business name. And basically, a pragmatic business name is all about functionality. So when you hear the name of the business, a consumer will immediately understand the brand and what exactly it is you're offering. So the best example for this is Kaboom Fireworks. Kaboom Fireworks is the name of the business. Exactly. And what I'll say here is, like, not all business names fall under these categories. There are a ton of others. The world is your oyster. There's no methodology or algorithm on how to come up with a special name. Like Steve Jobs named the company Apple because he liked the fruit.
I love that. And exactly like you said, like you don't necessarily need it to be some woo-woo big thing that has like a huge explanation, because one of the biggest companies on the planet was named because somebody liked eating a fruit of the name, in a sense. And like for me, my business name is, I'm trying to remember, it's clever because my business name is You're Mindful. but then it's YOUR, but it could be YO like apostrophe RE, like you are mindful. And people, whenever I tell them what my business is, like, oh, like you are mindful or just your? And I'm like, no, your. And it's a whole thing, but it's so much fun when you have a business name that plays on words, because people just are always wondering and they're so curious about it. So if you're able to, and we have a few recommendations on how to get to that point. If you're able to, definitely lean into like a play on words because it creates conversation. But honestly, pragmatic business names are great for SEO and so many other ways to get your business discovered. If you're driving on the highway and you see Kaboom Fireworks and you need fireworks, you know that you can go there for that. So no, they each have their own uses in their categories too.
Yeah, definitely. Like you're not going to drive by Kaboom Fireworks and say, oh, I need to go pick up toothbrushes from Kaboom Fireworks. Like,
you're not going to think I need to get an apple. So
exactly.
So I'm going to dive into our next question here, which kind of still leans into less of the legal side of naming your business and still leaning onto the creative side of things for a moment. But what I'd like to know is kind of say, what are like the 3 creative ways that people can come up with a business name? So we mentioned the types and buckets that some of the top business names fall into. Then how can people actually get there? Like, how can they really create a name that they are proud of and excited about?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many different ways. But the 3 that I'll name have helped me and have helped others. One of the first being, before you even start thinking about a name, excuse me. Before you even start thinking about a name, it's important to do things like think about your brand, the brand itself. How do you want your business and your brand to be represented? Overall, it's a really overwhelming and cumbersome process, but you can always change and shift the way that your brand is interpreted or represented as trends change and as time passes and so on and so forth. But the branding process is likely to start generating thoughts and adjectives for your brand. So you might want to go through that process, and maybe you'll land upon a couple of words just in brainstorming that process and putting together the identity and really defining your brand. So let's say, I don't know, I want to create a brand that sells home goods. Oops, I've done that. I want to create a brand that sells home goods that are reusable and that help you reduce your use of plastic in the household. Then I'm gonna dive into the next strategy here before I continue that example. But the next strategy is use something called your value proposition, or really develop your value proposition. And this is something you can build upon. So for those of you who don't know, a value proposition is basically a statement that answers the why someone should do business with you, or why should I buy your product, or why should I buy your service. So when you're considering that, you want to say why consumers should choose you over a competitor, for example. And in this specific case, the value prop would be that this business helps you reduce your use of disposable plastics in the home. Say it's ethically made or handmade, but basically you're using less plastic, which is good for the environment. And maybe I'll call it plasticless. Maybe write that down, bank it. We'll maybe come up with other words. So I think defining the brand and then refining the value proposition is a good strategy. Another strategy would be a plain old brainstorming session. I think it's a great way to generate ideas, but it can get tricky because sometimes you want to add a little bit of structure. I always recommend adding structure to brainstorming sessions because your thoughts can be flying everywhere, and it's hard for everyone to achieve the end goal. But if you add a bit of structure, it'll help to optimize the effectiveness of the actual process. And two strategies or 2 tools you can use that are really helpful. One being find word associations. This is a really fun exercise where you can write a single word and basically create a tree. So write down a word that's associated to the brand or the project that you're doing, and then create or add other words or phrases that are associated to that word. And you might end up with like 20, 30, 50 other words that are associated to it, which will kind of help put together phrases, adjectives, and you might come up with a business name. I've recently seen entrepreneurs do something called a visual jumpstart, where you pick an image that's somehow related to the focus of your brainstorm or your business or your idea, whatever it is, put it up on the wall, and then have everyone look at the image, interpret it, and write down all the thoughts and words that come to mind when they see it, whether it's just like sticky notes in person or just going on Figma and typing them out in little stickies on a brainstorm board. I think that's a really good place to start.
That is really exciting. I love it. And even somebody in the comments on LinkedIn, I'll bring up their comment here. They've said that they've heard a vision and mission statement, that they're very important for a business name. And while I believe you don't necessarily need those things initially for your business, because sometimes when you get going, those things really get defined, but they can be super helpful for when you are starting your business and when you're trying to consider and think through what you want to name yourself, how you want to brand yourself. And I really love that you started with chatting through brand first and defining your brand and who you are, how people see your brand, because your company is a living, breathing entity, right? It's almost like a little person, like we talked about before. And so I think it's really important for people to think of it that way, where when somebody meets your person or your baby or your brand, what are the first things that come to mind? Based on those things that come to mind, how do they value your brand as well? And then moving into and brainstorming and say, okay, all of these words can mean something, like jumbled together. So for me, with my business, with my meditation and mindfulness business, I know that people are focused on becoming more mindful. So then I just named it a play on words, like you're mindful, you are mindful. But I had so many other business names too, except they were taken. And we'll get to that a little bit later on for sure. Because I had maybe about 30 business names I really wanted, but I could only land on 3. So we'll get to that. But before we continue, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone to check out some of the links that I'm going to be leaving in the comments as we go through this live video, whether you're watching in the future or you're watching live right now. We'd love it if you took the chance to have a look at our website to learn more about how you can register your own business. Once you've determined what your business name is at the end of this video, you can actually just move through and register your business, check to see if it's available. We'll give you all the information that you need to make that happen. You can just click on the link that I leave there. And as well, to be sure to subscribe or like, or even just leave us a comment as we're going through this live stream, and we'll be able to get back to you right away. So I'd love to dive into our next question, which is, now that we understand a little bit more, actually, I think we've already answered that one. So I actually want us to dive into learning a bit more about a numbered company, and then we could dive in a little bit earlier into like regular named companies, because I feel like I need to leave you a little note there.
Yeah, all good. I can start with numbered companies.
Yes,
I guess for context, in Canada, you always need a legal business name, and that's either a numbered company or a named company. A numbered company is basically the actual legal name of the company is an automatically generated number. I think it's 7 numbers, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Canada Inc. So the generated number will represent the corporation's name. So for example, if you're registering a federal company in Canada, the legal business name of the company is just going to be randomly generated numbers by the government. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Canada Inc. Or if you're in British Columbia, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, British Columbia Inc. or BC Inc. Or LTD or whatever the legal ending is. So that's what a numbered company is. And a lot of people choose it for various reasons. The other option is a named company, which gives you a little bit more distinctiveness to the brand. So when you are going through owner, or when you're doing research, or when you're coming up with a business name, some of the things that you're going to hear a lot are these 2 words. And we describe them on owner for you through the platform. So we do a little bit of hand holding on that part. But the word descriptive and the word distinctive. So you have descriptive terms and distinctive terms, and your company has to include these items. So before I dive into a couple of items that you can't have, I think that's one of the things that we hear a lot from customers is like, what can I not put in my business name? What are the no-nos? So before I dive into that, I kind of want to explain, this is something that's really important. It's like what you actually need and how you set up this business name from a structural perspective. So trigger warning, I'm going to do a little bit of math, but with no numbers. So let's think about this equation. Corporation name equals distinctive element plus descriptive element plus legal ending. So are you with me? You following? Distinctive is a unique word that promotes your corporation's brand. A descriptive term is something that describes the nature of the business and what you'll be doing. So, for example, Alina Photography Inc. Let's dissect that. So, Alina is the distinctive element which promotes the corporation's brand, if you will. I'm Alina. I'm unique. Alina can be a random word. It could be apple spelt with a Z, but it's not a descriptive term. It's not an adjective. Photography is the descriptive element, so it describes the nature of the business. And then Inc. is the legal ending, so that kind of puts it all together. Alina Photography Inc. And the legal ending can be other things like Corp Ltd. There really is no legal consequences, and it's kind of up to you. It's a personal preference in most cases, at least in Canada. And so with all that in mind, here's some things to consider when you're creating it. And here's some things that you can't have as part of your business name. So first and foremost, the name can't be general with no distinctive element. So your company name can't be Plumber Inc. or Car Garage Inc. It has to be Tyler's Car Garage Inc. or something like that. And on the flip side, it can't be too specific. So it can't have no descriptive element. In this case, the example would be Alina Inc. or Tyler Inc. There's missing a little bit of information that would describe the nature of the business, which is important because when you're searching to see if trademarks or business names exist, you need to make sure that you're not infringing on an existing trademark or business. And so sometimes it helps having a distinctive or an added descriptive term when you're proposing the name that you want to the government during the incorporation process. So those are key items. Some other things include, we see this a lot where people try and name their company something Canada. So you can't have geographic names or personal names. So yeah, like I said, your company name can't be Alina or Linda Inc. There needs to be a descriptive term. You can't exceed 200 characters. That's a big one. I don't know why I would want to exceed 200 characters for a business name, because then your SEO would just be whack and it would be really difficult to find you, but that's really important. And then you can include things like government departments. So your business, the legal business name can't include things like Alberta Municipal Affairs, or what's another one? Canada Customs Agency. That can't be included in the legal name of your business. And then you can include things like university or college in the name. That's a whole other beast. So that requires, when you're registering or incorporating something like that, that's governed by a separate entity, a separate governing body. And so there's other legal requirements around that. So you can't have those names, or you can't have those terms in the name. That was a lot. I'm going to stop there.
No, this is so good. And I think it's really important, especially around the whole like university or college in the name. That is a biggie to know that if you're looking at a business that has university or college, like what you're getting. And that's why it's legally very important that your business does not have that information there, because that has its own government body, its own umbrella. That has nothing to do with just regular business registration. And I think too, there are a lot of things that people just don't know, especially around exceeding the 200 characters. That is a biggie as well, because I agree, I wouldn't want my business to have that many characters, but maybe as a teenager, there might have been a time I wanted like a music lyric or a sentence to be my business name. Like everyone got that music lyric tattoo. Like I would have wanted my music lyric business name. And so I think that would have been a big one for sure. So it's really interesting to see some of the rules that are there. But I do agree with so many of them, because that defining requirement of you can't just be named plumber. You can't just be named car garage. You need to be a very specific name for yourself so people can define you. They can find you. Back in the day, having a phone book, right? Like if everything just said plumber, how would you be able to know?
Be like, which one did I make an appointment with?
Exactly. You'd only know it by the phone number. And yeah, that's just its own whole thing. So yeah, I think that these are really important and honestly awesome. I'm going to leave a link to our website that actually lists and tells people how to actually choose their business name. This is like a biggie, and it'll really assist people on their journey of figuring out how to actually name their business, why there are certain rules, etc. It just goes a little bit further in depth to it. And it's one of our help articles there because we have a very robust support department that we'll be chatting about pretty soon. But I want to move on to our next question here, which is just around, let's say somebody actually follows all of these steps. They love their business. They love what they started. They maybe have been going strong for a little bit of time, but then suddenly a world event happens. That means that somebody could define their business by that event itself. Like, let's say they named their business after a very conflicting figure, or let's say they named their business after something that was recently destroyed, or after a country that they felt was very strong, but then something happened with them. Like, maybe there are a lot of headlines around it. Maybe they named their business, Karen's Inc. And then suddenly Karen became a name that not a lot of people want to be associated with, right? So what if people did something like that and then the tides turn or trends shift, or maybe they just outgrown their business names? Like, what are the steps that they would be able to take to change their business name?
Yeah, and that happens very, very often. And it's also the case where you maybe just want to rebrand, or you're not feeling it anymore and you want to go with something else, or you incorporated a numbered company and now you have a really cool brand idea or name idea that you want to use. I actually went through that, and I'll give that as an example in a bit, but you can change the name of your company in the future. It does require filing government documents and a list of resolutions to make sure that your directors and shareholders are approving that the legal name of the company is going to change. So essentially what you're doing in this case is you're amending the original articles of incorporation. The name for it is articles of amendment. So if we take federal Ontario companies, for example, because we actually service amendments for federal companies in Ontario on the owner platform directly, you can file an amendment where you propose a new business name. We'll generate all the legal documents necessary and do the actual government filing, but the government will basically review, make sure it's not infringing on any existing names or trademarks, and then they'll approve the name and let you know that it's done. And then what happens there is the articles of incorporation don't actually get edited, but you get a new document called the articles of amendment. So you can say, okay, now the business name going forward is this. So I've seen it where people have changed their brand name or their legal business name from Alina Photography Inc. to Joe's Photography Inc. or Apple Photography Inc. I don't know. And I've also seen it, and this has happened to me, where I incorporated a company because I wanted to get things started and I wanted to get the ball rolling, and I didn't know what to name it yet. So I incorporated a Canada Inc. numbered company. And then about a year later, I was like, hey, I want to call it this. I called it Collective Studio Inc. And so I went through the process on owner, and I did the amendment process, and I changed it to that. And yeah, I want to say it's easy. There's obviously government fees and service fees associated to this, especially if you want to do it properly and be compliant. So the fees can range, at least on owner, for federal Ontario corporations. They can range from $200 to $429, depending on your subscription plan. And generally speaking, more broadly speaking, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. So, if you're in British Columbia, you'll have to file that with the BC registry. You'll need to generate some resolutions. By law, lawyers will prepare these so that your directors and shareholders are actually approving that the name of the company is being changed, because the company doesn't really have a mind of its own outside those who govern it. So it sometimes can sound like a really cumbersome process, but on Owner, we make it really easy.
I love that. No, that's so important. And people change their mind, exactly like you said. Like, sometimes you'll grow the name, sometimes something controversial happens or whatever, and you just want to move forward. So no, that's really exciting and good to know that we offered that as a service as well too. There is a cost to it as well. So people just do not make that change lightly. Like, if you're going to adjust your company name, that also means you're rebranding. That means that your value prop may adjust or change as well. Well, your value prop may not be represented anymore. So just make sure that when you're taking that step, you don't take it lightly. But I think the fee associated with it may give people pause enough anyways to not just change their name automatically. Amazing. Well, I saw a few questions come through. So before we actually close out, I'd love to be able to run through them. So one of the questions that actually came through from somebody on YouTube, I was able to answer it and just let them know to reach out to our support department. But somebody actually said, you know, if they have like an open work permit in Canada, if they can register an incorporation or sole prop by themselves, I'm guessing on owner, and it would just be owned by them, and they would live in Montreal. Told them to reach out to support, but do we have any further answers than that?
Yeah, so I guess if I'm understanding the question correctly, somebody is asking if they can register, they can live in Montreal but register in another province.
Live in Montreal, and they want to register their sole prop and incorporation in Montreal, I'm assuming. So no, it seems pretty straightforward, but they're kind of saying they have a work permit and they're not a citizen.
Gotcha. So you don't need to be a Canadian citizen to register in Canada. There's actually a YouTube video that I created that talks about the requirements to registering a business in Canada as a non-resident. We actually now service Montreal and Quebec as a province, so we can help with that. But depending on the jurisdiction, there are different requirements. The only time where you would need to be a resident Canadian is if you're registering a federal company, in which case I believe 25% of your directors need to be resident Canadian. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to link to the YouTube video below for this person to be able to review.
I will say though, just on the topic of this, like this slide, we're talking about business names. There are language requirements in the province of Quebec where your name has to be in French. So that's something that I would recommend doing a little bit more research on. And when you go through the process on owner, we'll walk you through it and we'll advise you that you need to have French names or French words in your business name. And that's the only province in Canada where that's a requirement. It's very important, so be diligent about that.
Okay, awesome. That's really important. I saw a few other questions come through as well too, so we can jump into those. The first one is, what do I do if my business name is already taken?
Yeah, we get that question a lot. That's a great question. So if you're brainstorming and you're thinking about the business name, that's why we do business name searches to check whether the business name exists or not. And if the exact business name exists, it's going to be very difficult to incorporate it because it's not unique. And so what you might be able to do is change the distinctive or the descriptive terms so that you differentiate your business from the one that already exists. When you incorporate on owner, we generate this report called a nuanced report. So it actually pulls all the existing business names and trademarks that might pertain or might be very similar to the one that you're proposing. So you'll get some handholding on owner, and if it does exist, there are a lot of things that you can do, whether it's changing the descriptive term or the distinctive term, or doing something that describes how your business is different than the ones that are listed. But what I'll say is try and choose something that's a little bit more distinct, because if that business has a similar name, it's going to be harder for your customers to search you on a search engine. If they're in the same industry as you, it's going to be even more difficult. So you always want to make sure that you're being distinct so that you're differentiated from your competitors and your customers can easily find you.
That's really important. And also too, if somebody's dead set and they really are just like, no, this has to be the name, spelling mistakes are your best friend when it comes to this. Put a Z instead of an S. You know, you can rearrange certain letters. Like for me, I knew in my business that I couldn't have an apostrophe. So I did a play on words. Like feel free to get really creative. But like Alina said, there is a bit of hesitancy there, because if you're in the same industry as somebody else, because you're just saying, oh no, my name is going to be Pipes Plumbers. And that, like, you just need that name. And then you have Pipes with a Z, Plumbers, versus with an S. And somebody's just searching up Pipes Plumbers. Google search might just recorrect the name to have an S instead when they're searching for it, redirect them to your competitors. So do keep that in mind. But if you're dead set, use a well-placed spelling mistake to make that happen.
Very
I
creative.
thought you got to get creative. Use that play on words. We said that. I saw another question that came through as well, and it was, how long does it take for my name to change? And you have experience with this, so you can actually speak to that yourself.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of a loaded one because it depends. It depends on your jurisdiction. I filed a federal amendment, so I think it took 4 business days exactly to be done completely on owner. Sometimes it can range from 4 to 6 business days, 4 to 5 business days, depending on how quickly the federal government reviews the proposal. But I'd say that's probably a good rule of thumb or general timeline for federal. It really depends on your jurisdiction and the government registry that you're filing it with. You have to keep in mind too, if you're doing it on owner, it might be a lot quicker because we're pre-generating the resolutions necessary already. Whereas, if you're doing this with a service provider that does it manually, it might take a little bit more time because those director resolutions need to be prepared beforehand.
That's really important. Yes. And I will definitely toot our own horn and say that owner, we just really help people simplify things. We just make things much more accessible for small business owners, including myself. Like, I don't want to have to reach out to my lawyer, don't want to have to reach out to my accountant for every teeny tiny little thing I need to change in my business. Business name is a big thing to change, don't get me wrong. But for you to be able to file the correct paperwork, ensure that you're paying your fees, that you're in good standing, owner can really just bring you as close to or even across the finish line in most cases than if you're doing it yourself manually.
Exactly.
Amazing.
That's our value proposition right there.
Look at us. Oh my, do I work in marketing or something? Who am I? Oh, I love it. Well, we have one final question before we close out. And I really liked this one as well. And it is, what if I want numbers in my business name that are not arranged by the government?
Like actual numbers. Okay.
Yes. Let's say I wanted my business to be Your Mindful 1234.
Okay. Okay, like I mentioned earlier, there's 2 types of company names. There's the numbered company, which is automatically generated numbers by the government with the jurisdiction and then the legal ending. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, Canada Inc. Those numbers are always going to be automatically generated by the government. You can't say, these are my favorite numbers. I want to be 765431 Canada Inc. instead of whatever they give me. If you propose that name, you might run into some issues. On the other hand, if you want to name your company like 23 Photography Inc. or something like that, sometimes the government will see 23 as distinctive because it's, maybe it's associated to a brand. This is a little bit of a gray area. And we see it a lot where customers will include things, or they'll use a distinctive term, they'll submit it, and the government will actually say, doesn't make sense, you can't use this, you need to think of another one, or you need to explain why you're using this and what it means. So in some cases you can get away with it. And I guess the benefit of using owner is when you run into something like that, in legal terms, it's called a deficiency or a federal deficiency. So if I submit a name that I want to use and the federal government says, no, you can't use it, they're going to send back something called a deficiency. And it's really sometimes difficult to read those and to navigate them, but on owner, our team helps you understand it and respond to them. So it's kind of another hand-holding process that we do because it's really frustrating sometimes reading government documents. So anyway, to answer your question, you can potentially, but in most cases, it might generate something called a deficiency. But if it does happen, we can help you through that hurdle.
That's awesome. So exactly that. I think really what it boils down to for everything that we chatted about today is don't necessarily be married to anything but the process. Honestly, because you may or may not get what you want. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I had 30 business name ideas and I ran through every single one. I went on social media platforms to see who has the same name as me. I went on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, etc. to be like, who has this name? Do they have this name? I went through SEO. I went through so many different channels to see how I would be able to find a business name that would give me the best leverage in a marketing sense. But then when I went to go register, somebody else had my name in Canada. And I was like, no, I was married to this name. Don't be married to the name, be married to the process, be married to the journey of discovering new things about yourself and your business, adjusting, pivoting, because that's what you also need as a business owner is tenacity. You really need to be able to pivot, be malleable, be flexible enough to face these challenges. And I really personally do think that business name finding and registration is like your first test as a business owner of how flexible you are, how malleable you're willing to be as a part of this process. And I promise you that if you're willing to be flexible enough at the beginning of this process, you will be a great business owner in your own vein.
Yeah, I guess lesson learned from you, use the owner name search tool before you do all that to make sure that it actually doesn't exist.
Yes. Wait, are you being shady? Are you what are you
No.
what are you saying? It is true. It's so true. I wish that I did that first. I'm so happy I registered with Owner because if I had gone through that full process on my own and then I went on the government website and then filed everything and tried to do everything and then it just errored out after I paid my fees, after I did it, that would have been way worse. To be honest.
It's an emotional process. Like you're building your baby, and it's
Yes.
very emotional.
It is. It definitely is.
You're like this. I actually I decided on a name before I chose my name.
Yeah.
And I was so married to it, and then it didn't exist, but it kind of did. Like the name showed up a lot in SEO, so it wasn't really great. But anyways,
that is a whole thing. Yes,
SEO is a whole other can of worms.
It truly is. I feel like we should revisit that in the future. And a lot of people in the comments have let us know that they found this video valuable. So I am so excited for us to continue with this series. So as I mentioned before, be sure to subscribe or like or engage wherever it is that you're watching this video, whether you're watching it in real time or in the future. Check out the links that I've left in the comments down below so you can actually begin your own name search journey with Owner. And also check out the resources we have available for you to be able to create your own name. Come back to this video when you're building your own name, whether it's for a second business or your first. And thank you so much for your time, Alina, as well too, and for giving us all of the tips and tricks we can use for our future business names.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Goodbye, everyone, and have a lovely day. Bye.
Bye.